I wanted to do a video about a heavyweight prospect who looks to be on the rise. He's not a guy who has the mainstream, glamorous public support of an Anthony Joshua or of a Joseph Parker, but he's a guy who's starting to get increasingly highly rated. He's in the top 15 of two of the major four governing bodies, and he's a name I see cropping up more and more regularly on boxing forums and in hardcore boxing discussions. The guy I'm referring to is Charles Martin, who goes by the nickname of Prince Charles. A little bit about him. He's an American heavyweight, 6'5", so he's a big guy. He's rated 37th in the world on BoxRec. His record is 19 fights, 18 wins, no losses, 1 draw. The draw was a 4-rounder very, very early on in his career. I think we can forgive him that. Of his 18 wins, 16 have come by way of knockout, and as of yet, he has not yet gone beyond 6 rounds, despite the fact that his more recent 3 contests have all been scheduled for 10-round fights. Now, he's a guy I believe has the potential to make some waves in the heavyweight division. I'm not completely sold on him just yet, so I'm going to speak firstly about the positives and then come on to a few sort of areas of concern. As I've already mentioned, he's a big guy. Based on his record, he certainly carries a bit of pop, but let me talk about his style and how he works after seeing a few of his fights. I guess the first thing to mention is that he's a southpaw. He throws an excellent long straight left, sort of backhand cross, if you like, and you often see him knocking opponents literally backwards with this long straight punch. There's more to like about him than just that, though. He's not simply a one-punch fighter. Certainly there's accusations Deontay Wilder is. I mean, this guy has more strings to his bow than that. In various other fights, I've seen him land an uppercut with excellent accuracy. He doesn't forget to work the body. He throws that long left hand to the body, but he also throws hooks and other sort of combination punches into the body. What I'm saying is he's got good punching variety. He can fight long, but he's also got uppercuts, hooks. He doesn't just headhunt, he doesn't forget the body. He's got some sort of different dimensions to his game. I'll need to do a few more videos on him, but I've also seen some capability from him on the inside as well. He looks like a guy who can, get sucked into the rough of a fight and deal well on the inside. So there's a lot to like about him in that sense. In terms of the level of opposition he's been in with, is poor. He fought a guy called Joey Dojeko in 2013, who I've at least heard of. More recently, he fought Kirsten Mansell, who regular viewers of the heavyweight scene will be aware of. I think he lost to Deontay Wilder, lost in Prize Fighter once. So he's a guy who's been there or thereabouts. As I say, there's quite a lot to like about Charles Martin, but there are one or two slight concerns that I have about him. He didn't take up boxing, even amateur boxing, till the age of 22, if you're to believe his Wikipedia page. Now, I think that is noticeable, specifically in his footwork. I don't think his footwork is silky smooth. I think it's, at times, quite sort of robotic, and it lacks the sort of, the instinctive movement of a guy who's been doing this from a very, very early age and from childhood, if you like. My other concern with him is, against the level of opposition he's been in with, he's looked good, but I think he fights at somewhat of a slow pace. He hasn't been in with anyone yet who's put him on his back foot, or who's rushed him, who's made him hurry at all. And he's got this tendency to stand in front of opponents and just use his advanced size to throw 1-2s, which is fine for the level of opposition he's been in with. But I'm yet to see athleticism from him. I'm yet to see exceptional movement from him. I don't think he's particularly agile or particularly fast. I think he's he's more of a guy who, as I say, is quite flat-footed, and who just stands there and throws long punches. I appreciate the level of opposition he's been in with hasn't brought this out of him, and it may be that when he fights someone better, we see a more athletic, more dynamic fighter. But for me, whilst he has got good punch variety, whilst he has got good sort of body work, good uppercuts, etc., my concern is with his legs, not his hands. I just wonder if he's too static and not quite athletic enough to make it to the top of the division. The reason I bring that up in particular is there's talk on Twitter of Charles Martin fighting Eddie Chambers. The two guys have been involved in a sort of heated war of words, and Chambers is on the bill for Frank Warren's card at the O2 on February the 28th. As of yet, he hasn't found an opponent, so realistically this could be a fight that both guys would consider. For Charles Martin, it would be an opportunity to fight a guy who's very well known, who's higher rated than him. It's an opportunity to sort of take quite a big scalp and move himself forward in the heavyweight division. For Eddie Chambers, he's been in a few weaker fights in 2014. He's going to want to step up the level of opposition, prove to himself that he's still got what it takes. So it's a fight that is realistic on those grounds. Obviously, two American heavyweights, in a reasonable fight, always is going to attract a level of interest. My concern is that at present, at the age of 28, and with the level of opposition Martin's been in with, this fight could come a bit too soon for him. Eddie Chambers, he's only 32, he's not past it, but he's had something like 45 professional fights. This is a guy who, despite the fact that he's still relatively young, has huge experience, has huge ring savvy. Let's not forget his nickname is Fast Eddie Chambers. He's known for his speed. He's recently been hitting a lot harder under Peter Fury. My thoughts are that whilst Charles Martin has some advantages in the fight, I'd probably give him the edge in power. I'd certainly give him the edge in height and size. When your last fight has been against Kirsten Mansell, it is difficult to step up and fight someone like Eddie Chambers if you haven't previously been in with that sort of opposition. Charles Martin has looked devastating in terms of his punching power, but I say this about Anthony Joshua as well. It's unclear if he's a genuinely big puncher until we see him face, top 50 heavyweights. Charles Martin, in my opinion, hasn't fought a top 50 heavyweight, and I think that when you start knocking out those kind of guys, that's when you look like a big power puncher to my eyes. The fact that his knockout ratio is very, very high doesn't impress me on its own without the calibre of opposition. So I think whilst I would give him the edge over Chambers in power, because Chambers I don't view as a huge puncher, I don't think it's going to be as simple as for Charles Martin as it has been in his previous fights. As I say, he went 6 rounds about 10 fights ago, but since then he's taken care of business within 4 rounds. On probably 7 or 8 fights on the bounce, all ended within 10 rounds. For me, he's not going to do that to a guy like Eddie Chambers. He's going to be dragged late into a fight, a 10-round fight. He's a big guy. He's quite low-paced in my opinion. I don't know what his stamina is going to be like going into round 9, going into round 10 with a guy like Eddie Chambers. A guy who not only has advanced movement, but also has advanced technical skills. He knows how to use angles. A guy with real sort of ring savvy, a sort of real hardcore veteran of the sport, if you like. And my opinion at this stage, despite the fact I like Charles Martin, and despite the fact I think he does have something to offer in the heavyweight scene, I think Eddie Chambers outpoints him. I think Eddie Chambers has got the potential to be more athletic, better movement, more experience, and I think Charles Martin will allow Eddie Chambers too much time, too much space, and throwing sort of quite static long 1-2s won't be enough to open the door for Eddie Chambers. The way I look at Martin at present is, despite the fact I've talked about his impressive punch variety, that often comes out when he's finishing fights. You know, when he's got an opponent hurt up against the ropes, perhaps. You know, that's when you see the sort of the uppercuts, the hooks, the body work. But in terms of how he works his way in and how he gets those openings live, it's the long 1-2. And a guy like Eddie Chambers, who's had experience sparring with, you know, huge guys like Tyson Fury and Hughie Fury, let's not forget he got to round 12 with Klitschko. Yeah, he's gonna be used to dealing with that kind of assault. And I don't think Charles Martin's got the versatility at this stage and the experience to work his way in on a guy like Eddie Chambers. I can see Eddie Chambers having the sort of experience and the savvy to box on the back foot, to jab his way in. So that's another thing I haven't mentioned. I don't think Charles Martin's jab is anything too spectacular. I think he paws with it and uses it as an opening purely to throw his long left. But I don't think the jab in itself is too much of a weapon at this stage. So I could see Eddie Chambers, despite the fact he's a small amount, getting on his back foot, using movement, using athleticism, possibly outscoring Martin in terms of the jab, trying to avoid that long left. And at this stage, I go with Eddie Chambers. What I'd like to see Charles Martin do, and I understand that this is very, very difficult if you don't have a huge promotional team behind you. Yeah, it's not easy to get opponents like Kevin Johnson, Sherman Williams, Malik Scott. Yeah, it's not easy to bring these guys in, to pay for these guys, if you've not got a huge broadcast deal, if you've not got a huge promotional team behind you. And I can understand why it may not be financially viable for him to be in these kind of fights. But at the minute, guys like Kirsten Mansell, he's just too good for them. And he's not learning in the ring. He's just going in and taking care of business. And whilst that's all well and good, it doesn't necessarily prepare you for the step up. Look at the parallels with Chris Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe Saunders, you know. Another guy, Eubank, looked devastating, looked like a huge puncher, but when he actually fought someone his own level of capability, suddenly the power wasn't enough. Suddenly different flaws were clear. And I think Charles Martin's lack of sort of foot speed, footwork, jab, movement and athleticism could cost him against a guy like Eddie Chambers. If he had 2 or 3 more learning fights before it, it could be a very, very different story. But this guy isn't going to get the glamorous Kevin Johnson type opponents that Matchroom will buy for Anthony Joshua. It's just not going to be available to him. So it's a tough time. I wouldn't rule Charles Martin out of the fight with Eddie Chambers. He is a lot bigger. He's younger. He does seem to carry more power. He's determined and on a hot winning streak. I wouldn't count him out, but I'd give the edge to Eddie Chambers. My thoughts on Charles Martin in summary: a lot of positives, but possibly more concerns. And with the depth of quality out there in the heavyweight division right now, I see this guy as a top 15 fighter in 2 years at best. I think there's too many better guys coming through. If we look at Joshua and Parker, they're the 2 sort of classic examples of this generation, I guess. But these are guys who also have power. But for me, they've got more advanced movement, advanced sort of technical capability. And I think he may struggle with those sort of guys. Let me know your thoughts on Charles Martin. I know a lot of people like him, and I want to make clear that my opinion isn't made up on the guy. He may well show different sides, different attributes, different capabilities when fighting a better level of opposition. As the phrase goes, you can only beat what's put in front of you. So I'm not making a final judgment on him. I'm not ruling him out. What I am saying is that if I could promote one of the other heavyweights over Charles Martin, I probably would at this stage, based on the form in the book. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching. Follow me on Twitter @BoxingGossip.